welcome to this week's REI Deal Breakdown. I am your host, Greg Helbeck, and if you're not familiar with me, I have been a full-time real estate investor now for practically a decade. I've done well over 320 properties, and the point of this show is to put the knowledge that I've learned over the last 10 years into your brain so you can go out and you can implement what I'm going to share and become more successful as a real estate entrepreneur. So if you get value from this video or this podcast, if you could do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you're listening to this on audio, share the audio with someone else. It would really mean a lot to me. And today we're going to talk about a real big, fat, juicy deal where we made $100,000 on a wholesale deal in Middletown, New York. So I'll tell you how we found it. I'll tell you how we got the deal done. And hopefully you can take some lessons from this and apply it in your business. So first of all, the way that I found this property was through a referral partner. So this is a friend of mine, James. He really specializes in finding these hairy properties around the New York area that have title issues and they're vacant and they're inherited. And this property was all three of those. It was inherited property that was vacant and a ton of back taxes on it. They haven't paid the taxes in like 5 years. So what happened was property was sitting vacant. I believe it was a 5-unit apartment building. And he was like, hey man, I'm trying to get in touch with the owner. It could be a deal. Then he reached out to me because he needed some help. And he's like, let's partner on it. We've done a bunch of deals together. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, man. This looks like a good opportunity. We got to find the owner. We got to see who's involved in this thing. So the owner was passed away and they had no biological children. They had some stepchildren, but apparently the stepchildren just didn't want to do anything with it. And there was no will and super complicated. So what ended up happening was I had to hire a genealogist to find the next of kin. So this was a situation where they had no real living relatives anymore. And I had the genealogist go out and they found their cousin of the deceased owner. This cousin was 92 years old, I think. And I knew that calling a 92-year-old was probably not going to be a good idea. So what I ended up doing was I found the cousin's son, who was like 60. And I called him and I said, hey, this is completely out of the blue. Your mom inherited this property and we want to buy it. He thought it was a little bit of a scam and I had to, explain to him what was going on. And I said, listen, I've been trying to get in touch with the owner and I hired a genealogist to trace the family tree. And they were like, well, I mean, if that's the case, we'd be open to it. So there's, the mother in this case was the seller. And then the son and then his siblings were, all like basically the decision makers. So we ended up negotiating a deal with them. And, we explained to them there's a bunch of taxes owed and this, that, and the other. They agreed to the number, because at this point it was like found money to them. If I never called them, they would have never known about this. It would have went to auction and that would have been a dead deal. So they agreed to the property and they were like, yep, we'll do it. We signed a contract, get the attorneys involved, get a title company involved. I had to find a specific title company who was willing to insure a property with some hair on it. So we got affidavits of heirship. We did everything by the book. And, even if you do stuff by the book, some title companies just don't want to touch this kind of stuff because it's like, out of the ordinary. So anyway, found a title company who was willing to do it. It took like 4 or 5 months to get this title stuff cleared up. So the point here is that while we were trying to get the title clear, I didn't market this property for sale. We knew it was going to be a wholesale. And I thought it was going to be like a $250,000 wholesale, but turns out in this area where the property is, if the property sits in a certain zone and it's been sitting vacant for a while, it has to get converted back to a one-family property. It makes no sense. So I found out that this property was no longer going to be able to be a 5-unit apartment building. It had to get converted back to like a mansion, like a single-family mansion. And I'm like, well, that's going to drop the value a lot, but it's still a deal. We got this thing at a ridiculous price. So ended up putting it out to the buyer's list, found a buyer for $100,000 over what we were in contract with the seller for. As the deal kind of progressed to the closing, the sellers kind of got a little like, hey, we want more money. So we ended up giving them a little bit more money, still ended up making $100,000 on the deal, but it ended up closing. It was completely virtual. I never saw the property. I never met the owner. I never met the buyer. It was 100% done through my phone and the computer. And me and James split it 50-50. So overall, good payday for both of us. What are some lessons you can learn on this deal that I just shared with you that you can apply in your business? Well, lesson number 1 is I make this lesson all the time. Do deals with your competition. Don't compete with them, collaborate with them. And lesson number 2 here is when you have a major title issue property, you're going to make a lot of money if the seller's on board because ultimately no one else is most likely going to be willing to solve their problem. Like I knew exactly how to close this property. I knew how to get the title issues fixed. I knew who to call. I knew what to do and provided a lot of value for these sellers because ultimately if we never called them, they would have never gotten any money because they would have never known the house was for sale because they didn't even know they were the owner, right? Because we had the genealogist. So the third lesson here, if the deal warrants it, go above and beyond to find the owner. I mean, I didn't need to get a genealogist. I could have just said, oh, fuck it, man, there's too much title issues. Let's just walk away. But ultimately, if I did that, I would have left $60,000 net to me on the table after we split 50-50. So if the deal warrants it, go and dig. Go get a genealogist, right? Find somebody who can help you find the legal owner. Like, this is a situation where we had no competition. No one else was calling the owner. No one even knew they were the owner. So there's no competition on this thing. It was a relatively simple deal once we got everything dialed in after the title issues got fixed. And these are opportunities that are sitting right under your fingertips. I'm almost positive these types of houses are all over the country, from San Diego all the way up to Boston. They're everywhere in between. So if you solve a problem for somebody, generally you make some money. So that's the property in Middletown. That's the deal breakdown. If you're listening to this or watching this and you're like, whoa, I'm in the Hudson Valley. Hey, I'm out in Seattle. I want to do some deals with you, Greg. Well, if you have a deal, I'd love to do it with you. Whether I buy it from you as a cash buyer or we wholesale it together like this case, I'd love to do some more deals with my listeners and viewers. So if you have something, send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or a DM on Instagram, and I'll see you on the next REI deal breakdown.